And welcome back to Who Would Win, the week of Who Would Win. This one comes to us from the Random Shits channel, who asked the question, who wouldn't fight, the big Skullcrawler or Lizzie from Rampage, the movie? Which, if you haven't watched my review for it, I actually had a lot of fun with Rampage. Is it a perfect movie? No, but when you get what they're promising you, a big giant monster royale with The Rock in the middle there, it's a good time. It's a fun time. If I seem a little more energetic, it's because the power came back on. We lost power yesterday because we're in Massachusetts and there was a big windstorm. And it just knocked out the power for nearly 24 hours. It was not fun. Especially in the frickin' February where it's cold as balls. But also, there's a few other, I just got home. We have an announcement of a Pokemon Direct tomorrow, which is probably going to reveal Generation 8. Probably. No guarantee, but it's like 99 or 95% certain that it's going to probably reveal that. And I may have figured out a way to enhance the quality of my videos and actually have the object I'm looking at on screen. And it turns out it was a pretty obvious way that I should have thought of a long time ago, but needless to say, we'll get to that when we get to it. So, the big one versus Lizzie. Now, unfortunately, one of the few things that's going on right now that I can't do is check the internet. The internet's still down right now. Luckily, I am capable of... This one I can do off the top of my head without too much difficulty. But the big one was bigger than Kong was in Kong Skull Island. Now, Kong, I do believe there's an official recording of how big Kong is. Kong is not, at least back in the Skull Island movie, was not bigger than Godzilla, who was well over like 300 feet or 300 stories tall. He's huge. Kong is not that big. He's big, though. He's, I think, like a couple hundred, like 200 feet tall or something like that. He's big. He's definitely big. The big one was even bigger than Kong was, at least in terms of overall stature, length, height, and all that. Kong was more heavily built, but he was also faster and was bipedal. And they also had, actual thumbs, clasping arms, and everything along those lines. But the big one, because of the biology of the Skullcrawler, only has 2 limbs and a long tail. And just a long tail, and and the massive rows of teeth in its mouth like a shark. But at the same time, it was still able to kill Kong's parents. Now, we don't know how big Kong actually was compared to his parents. We know... Sorry, phone was off the hook. God damn it. I had to redo this here because my dad called and interrupted the video. That I'm not going to bother cutting out. There's no reason for that. It was a second. There we go. Second. Don't you hate that when you can't snap right? We know that the Skullcrawler is big enough to kill Kong's parents. We don't know if Kong is bigger than his parents were when the Skullcrawler killed them, and why Skullcrawler even left and didn't kill Kong. Maybe Kong wasn't with them at the time. So we don't know that. We do know though that despite its large size, it was extremely fast. It was very fast, very durable. It took Kong. Kong bashed in the face plenty of times. It really didn't slow it down that much, but Kong essentially had to kill it by ripping out its throat and shit that was in its innards, and it was bad. It was terrible. It was horrifying. Pretty fun, pretty good though. It was pretty brutal. And it does go to show that a smart opponent can beat it. Something of comparable size or strength can definitely overpower it. Speed as well, and agility. Intelligence, I think, would be a big thing with it, but you could theoretically just overpower it. Like, Godzilla could easily just overpower the Skullcrawler. Probably wouldn't have to use his atomic breath either, but be that as it may. Lizzie was, now there was, in the Rampage movie, mutagens were involved. DNA, editing, that's what they called it. And essentially, it pretty much mixed the DNA of other animals together, or re-edited and rearranged them. Like, hell, we saw a 4th one, a rat in the beginning that had, like, porcupine spines. It was huge, like the size of a dog. Surprisingly, George didn't have, besides his size getting bigger and bigger, George didn't have any signs of, like, editing. He didn't. He didn't have any, like, spikes or fins or wings, a flying gorilla. Flying monkeys, anyone? No, he didn't have any of that. Ralph, though, we know Ralph had some quills that he could fire out. We know he had fins for wings. If I'm remembering correctly, Lizzie was the one that killed him. Lizzie was actually the strongest one of them. Lizzie didn't even show up until the very end, near the end of the movie. We saw Ralph. We got an early view of Ralph in the woods with that great scene where he takes out the army, the mercs, basically. We didn't get Lizzie except a few hints of Lizzie, and then when Lizzie showed up at the end, Lizzie, though, was the hardest one to put down. It took George, who was basically a version of Kong, more or less, at that point, to basically stab it in the eye and basically skewer it in the brain. That's basically what it took to kill Lizzie. Because Lizzie was able to just physically dominate George and just killed Ralph without too much difficulty. Lizzie was huge. Now, I don't know if Lizzie was quite as long. Definitely not as tall. I'll say the Skullcrawler had a height advantage on Lizzie. Not by much, but it had a height advantage. Skullcrawler was also a lot faster. A lot faster than Lizzie was, but Lizzie has far more bulk and heft than the Skullcrawler can muster. Like, Lizzie's just a giant carnivorous tank of reptilian doom and desire. And Lizzie had some mutations like some horns. I believe it's implied Lizzie had gills as well. Like the editing allowed it to have gills. And Lizzie could tank like grenades to the face without too much difficulty. Lizzie was durable, like George, despite being faster, more maneuverable, was only able to beat Lizzie. By going for specific weak points. And that's because George was significantly intelligent. So, yeah, it's what Lizzie had. A strong enough opponent physically to put Lizzie down, I'm sure. Like Godzilla versus Lizzie, Godzilla wins that fight. Though Lizzie, I think, would actually, give Godzilla a bit of a struggle because it would have enough strength to probably bite and injure his foot or his tail. But ultimately, Godzilla could easily beat Lizzie. So a powerful enough opponent could beat Lizzie. It's similar to the Skullcrawler. It's power versus power. Power can overpower power. Wow, that's a tongue twister. If I've ever heard one. Power can overpower power if you power through the power. So these two. Let's assume Lizzie survives. Lizzie gets out of there. Even regenerates the eye and all that. So forces the thing out. So Lizzie just basically escapes, swims out into the oceans, eating some whales, and eventually makes it to Skull Island, where the big one, let's say this is pre-Kong Skull Island, like the big one's still there. So Lizzie is, finding its place in the food chain here. It's probably interacting. I think Lizzie would probably even give Kong some trouble. Like, Kong was bigger than George, I believe, but not by huge. From what we actually eventually saw, Kong was at least twice the size of George. That said, though, I think Lizzie would still give Kong a serious fight to Kong, and maybe even break a bone if it landed a crushing bite, because Kong is not Kong. Because Lizzie, unlike the Skullcrawler, is mutated from an animal that has the strongest recorded bite force in history. Not just the strongest recorded bite. I mean, because we can't actually record the bite strength of like a T-Rex or something like that. Though it's theorized that may have a higher bite strength. In terms of animals living today, crocodilians have the highest bite force of any creature. Now you scale that up to something that could bite through a building, and imagine what that's like chomping down on you. So anyway, it's invading the ecosystem, and then the big one suddenly wakes up because it senses a rival in its particular territory and field. So, it'll wake up and the fight commences. Now, Skullcrawler will probably try to attack Lizzie and, it'd be too fast for Lizzie to get a firm grip on and bite on. And, try to claw at and bite Lizzie. Problem is, Lizzie would be, I think, almost too durable for the Skullcrawler to do any serious or lasting damage. If it does any damage, it's going to be superficial damage. It's not going to be doing anything of lasting consequence onto Lizzie, unfortunately. At least not in that sense. So it's going to just claw, scratch, and Lizzie will be upset and hurt. However, ultimately, the tail's flapping right in front of Lizzie's face, who's got huge jaws, clamps the tail and just chomp pulls down the Skullcrawler, the big one, and just basically a tail just starts death rolling, ripping it, thrusting, rips off the Skullcrawler's tail, just eats it, and then they go toe to toe. They collide. The Skullcrawler though does have arms; they can kind of stop the jaws of Lizzie, so it'll hold Lizzie's jaws open to some degree, and keep them open. But Lizzie will just thrash around, and I don't think the Skullcrawler it could physically handle Lizzie. I think Lizzie's sheer weight and bulk and strength would be more than enough to overpower the Skullcrawler. The Skullcrawler could put up a good fight physically, but I think Lizzie's just sheer power will just, steamroll over the Skullcrawler. I think that is what would likely happen. So when it eventually is able to bite down again, bites down on the Skullcrawler's arm, and bites down with enough strength to basically just breaks its arm and just rips its arm off. Now you got now you're missing. It's missing a tail. It's missing an arm. It's pretty much trying to limp away. At this point, then Lizzie just comes in and smacks down, just cracks its head and just eats it and just feasts on the Skullcrawler, and then is now the supreme being of the ecosystem, which could lead into a Kong versus Lizzie fight if someone wants to suggest that for a sequel fight. But no, I have to say Lizzie takes this because Lizzie, despite the fact, again, the Skullcrawler might have a height advantage, and a speed advantage, and is a bit more capable because it actually has arms. It does actually have arms, technically, with claws on it. It doesn't really matter if it can't do a significant damage to Lizzie. And Lizzie just has so much bulk and weight to her, and just physical raw strength and durability, that I do think it would just overpower, and it'd be impossible for the Skullcrawler to get any significant lasting damage in on him. So ultimately, yeah, I gotta go with Lizzie in this fight. Is there a way the Skullcrawler could win? I mean, I suppose it could theoretically outlast Lizzie. I mean, like, chomp here, chomp there, maybe try to bleed it out. But Croc's bodies are really resilient, and they'll actually shut off blood flow to areas that are just, dead. Like, I remember watching an episode of Crocodile Hunter where he caught a croc that basically had its eye shot out. And whether the bull or head was still in there, I can't remember. But it had its eye shot out. And basically that tissue, its body had cut off all the blood flow to the area, so it was just white dead tissue there. But because the Croc's immune systems are so good, Crocs have really strong immune systems. Hell, they make ours look like bitches at points. They can still get sick, and they can still get things like cancer, but it's very rare for them to get cancer and get sick like that. So ultimately, the same thing would be for Lizzie. Any severe damage that would be dealt that isn't a killing blow, her body could theoretically, after a little bit, shut off blood flow to those areas, or to at least temporarily. Plus, with genetic editing, you don't know how that works. It could just allow her to have a regenerating healing factor in some ways, long term, to keep her from bleeding out, and then maybe accept blood flow later on to certain areas to allow the healing process to take effect. Ultimately, though, I gotta go Lizzie. I don't know if there's a way the big one could theoretically win. Now, this is all predicated on the fact that I don't actually have a legitimate size chart in front of me right now. If I had the actual sizes of these guys in front of me, I would have a better idea of how to judge this fight. Unfortunately, I don't, because the internet's still out. So when the internet comes back, I will definitely look into it, and then maybe I'll reevaluate my decision. But I'm pretty sure Lizzie is just bigger and heftier and more powerful. And even if the Skullcrawler is longer or taller, I don't think it would matter much in this fight. I don't think the Skullcrawler could do enough damage to kill the to kill Lizzie. So yeah. That's my thoughts on that, though. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, if you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. Do a review of it at some point. And ideas for who would win, Star Wars, Superhero Magic, What If, anything I do on the channel. Put that in the comments below. Let me know. I'll get to that at some point. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one, folks.